Hello, it's me. I'm just doing this a little early today. It's 8:35 p.m. on September 8th of 2020. And my name is Jarrett Earl Casey. I'm here in Midvale, Utah. And yeah, I just wanted to hop in. Someone just joined us. So once again, it's Jarrett Earl Casey, September 8th, 2020 at 8:36 p.m. I went to bed a little early last night after our video and slept until 8 this morning, which was really amazing. To get a little bit of extra sleep. Normally I wake up at around 6:10, 6:15. Although I did wake up around 4 or 5 and have a bowl of oatmeal, but and I had some message. Sometimes when I'm sleeping, something's going on in my brain, and when I wake up, this message immediately comes out through my brain that's been kind of building up through the night. It's like I've been working on it. So that happened this morning, but I can't remember what it was, of course. And I should probably get in the habit of writing it down right away, but instead I just keep going off in my head. But whatever, someone out there heard it. So, and I know that someone's always listening, and so that's enough for me. But yeah, I should try and do that. Anyways, got really cold here in Utah overnight. It would drop to like 40 degrees. The high today was in the 50s. We had really intense winds, so up to hurricane force winds over 100 miles per hour in certain parts of the metro area. So that was kind of interesting. So I'm wearing a sweater today. So that happens every year. It usually happens in the spring, but sometimes it can happen in the autumn as well. It's not quite autumn, but feels like it today. So other than that, I went to the gym again today and I went grocery shopping. I walked out without paying for my groceries. I wasn't thinking, I was all in my head. I rang them up and then I bagged them and I just walked away. But I was about halfway through the parking lot and it hit me and I went, oh my gosh, I didn't pay for those. So I ran back and paid for them. So I felt really stupid. I was like, hey, I forgot to pay for these. Like, yeah, I know. I let them know there was a walkout. I'm like, he said, I told him it was probably unintentional, but I'm like, okay, well, I'm so sorry. I just was in my head. I wasn't thinking. So he was able to bring the receipt back and just scan it and I could just pay it right there. I didn't have to re-ring it all up or anything. So sorry, my cat's playing. So that's kind of what went on today. Other than that, in my 40-day transformation class, we talked about being more present, which I wasn't good at today. I was supposed to catch myself every time I went off in my mind and write it down, which I did do 4 times. But yeah, so the things that I wrote down that I caught myself doing, telling everyone I'm open-minded and open-hearted and my arms are open. And also I was singing a song from Rent. It goes, there is no future, there is no past. 'Cause she was talking about that. So anyways, I can sing sometimes. That wasn't one of those times. I caught myself talking about politics and apologizing for both loving the Trump family and not supporting Donald Trump for president. I caught myself getting upset at the government for restricting freedoms and not acknowledging its mistakes. Also got upset that people are making a big deal of my credit score in my head and using it as an excuse to adversely affect people's lives. Because in my head, they keep saying that, so this is going to sound crazy because once again, no one has confirmed this with me, but what I'm hearing is that there are many people who can hear my thoughts, and that there's kind of a lot of politics going around because I'm awakening. And there's a lot of politics going around people being able to talk to me about it. And so everyone keeps pointing fingers at one another. So how it's been described to me is the government would like to talk to me, but they can't until I pass a government background check, which I can pass with flying colors, except for my credit score, because it's in the 500s and they need it to be over 600. So that's holding a bunch of people back, and they're telling everyone that they cannot talk to me, including the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Who they're saying in my head would like to talk to me, but they're having their freedoms restricted or diminished by the government. And the government's saying the only way they can talk to me without the government talking to me first, which I need a good credit score, is if I join the church. And I've expressed that I love the church very much and I feel very connected to them, and we share a lot of views, although we do not share every view. And one of them is that I see myself as a perfect child of God, and I'm gay. Although I think many members of the church would argue we do see that the same, and that there would be a place for me in the church. But I see myself as wanting to eventually have a family and be married to another man, and so I know that that's not possible in the church. So I've chosen not to join the church, although I love it and I support it. And I love all of its members so dearly, more than they'll ever know. And anyway, so that's where that credit score thing came from. It's basically they're holding all these people hostage because of my credit score. And so maybe that's not happening. It just all be in my head. But in any case, no one has spoken to me, and that's difficult. I feel very isolated. And it's hard because I know in the Course it talks about joining hands is the opposite of isolation, and it's what Christ calls us to do with one another. And that sickness is isolation and healing is joining. So we're here, there's so much sickness in this world and in this mind that we all share. And that sickness can sometimes come out in behaviors that are contrary to our benefit, and we can witness that day in and day out in the world that we live in. Some of us struggle with it personally. It may come through addiction, it may come through anger, it may come through, but we might see it in the systems that are built, or in the way people treat one another through racism or discrimination or greed. So those all come from this sick mind. So sickness is isolation. So when we're presented with a sick world, rather than isolating people and cutting them off, we should be joining with them and healing, facilitating healing, and that can help heal the world, especially if they're greatly connected, which is neither here nor there. It doesn't mean they're any better or worse than anyone. It just is that kind of reality of the moment. And so it's our job to just honor that. And rather than isolate those people, just join with them and try to facilitate the greatest amount of healing that we can. So I feel very frustrated that this game of politics is being played, and that people's freedoms are being withheld from them. And even if I don't have that right, it's just what I'm hearing, what's kind of what I'm getting, to know that there are other, our Black brothers and sisters who are having their rights taken from them. We've talked about this, so it's just a very frustrating time. But so that's what I was talking about there. And then I got upset about, oh, this was an interesting one. I'm going to sound so crazy. The government surveilling citizens without communication or transparency. And then I was inviting them to get honest and communicative about the decisions they are making about people's lives. So, anyways, that's where I stopped catching myself. But some other things I may have caught myself doing, being upset about. Oh, some people were saying that I may not make it through this life without being I guess made to suffer and killed is what they were suggesting because of this experience. And that was really difficult for me to hear as well. I've heard it a lot in the last 3 years. And sometimes I can get defensive, but other times I just respond with a, well, why would anyone do that? Is that who we are? Is that the message people want to send to the world? Is that, and to Heavenly Father and to the beyond? Is that how we treat people? Is that just how it is? Because it isn't. That's not the real world. So it's really difficult to hear that. And I haven't heard it in many weeks. It kind of had been left behind finally. A few months ago, I was hearing it quite a bit. And then someone brought it up again today. And so that was very difficult for me to hear. It is every time. And anyways, I got upset about that, of course. Other than that, I just kind of hung out. Or I guess just relaxed here at home is what I should say. So today from the course, we're reading chapter 3, the innocent perception, and section 4, error and the ego. So this reads, the abilities you now possess are only shadows of your real strength. All of your present functions are divided and open to question and doubt. This is because you are not certain how you will use them, and therefore are incapable of knowledge. You are also incapable of knowledge because you can still perceive lovelessly. Perception did not exist until the separation introduced degrees, aspects, and intervals. Spirit has no levels, and all conflict arises from the concept of levels. Only the levels of the Trinity are capable of unity. The levels created by the separation cannot but conflict. This is because they are meaningless to each other. So this is saying if we try to create a caste system or different levels of people, superiors and inferiors and kind of just in-betweeners, that there will always be conflict because the only true levels are that of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Or if you choose to use non-binary terms, our Creator, His creation, and His creations, His children. and spirit. Oh, I said his, didn't I? Sorry, it's just a habit. And anything outside of that is is bound to lead to eventual conflict. And we see this played out again and again throughout human history. And so it's very important right now, especially in a country where we believe that all men were created equal. That is woven into the very fabric of the foundation of this country, that we honor that equality, and instead of moving further away from it, keep making it more and more true, and how we teach our children to see one another, how we practice seeing one another, and how we establish our laws and practices, business practices, practices of governance, to more and more embrace seeing each other truly as equals, rather than coming through this emergent age and into new awareness and new technologies that create new systems and new ways of doing things, and falling back into that habit of trying to create castes of people, which will only inevitably lead to more conflict. So it may seem like a good idea at the time, or it may seem to create winners and losers. And if you're in the right position, you can be a winner by taking advantage of creating a system like that. But we're truly here to establish peace and to maintain peace and to develop peace into something so natural that it's all that we know. And doing things like that will only lead to conflict. And so they must be laid down and corrected and let go of, in order to really, truly bring peace to the world. Consciousness, the level of perception, was the first split introduced to the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. Consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be, rather than as you are. Yet you can know yourself only as you are, because that is all you can be sure of. Everything else is open to question. The ego is the questioning aspect of the post-separation self, which was made rather than created. It is capable of asking questions, but not of perceiving meaningful answers, because these would involve knowledge and cannot be perceived. The mind is therefore confused, because only one-mindedness can be without confusion. A separated or divided mind must be confused. It is necessarily uncertain about what it is. It has to be in conflict because it's out of accord with itself. This makes its aspects strangers to each other. And this is the essence of the fear-prone condition, in which attack is always possible. So the nice thing about this sort of awakening in our mind connection, as it comes into our awareness, is we can start to, if we approach it correctly and gently and patiently, no longer become strangers to one another. We can start to really come to know each other. And even though, okay, I'm starting to go, okay, wow, we're one. We're one. Like, whoa. I mean, I always knew, like, hey, one world, one love, like, we're all children of God, but like, we're like one with one another. Like, that can kind of really mess with people's minds. Especially, I remember a couple of years ago when this started happening. Well, it happened 3 years ago, but some of the conversation people were saying, what are we going to be like, the Borg? We're going to like just all like become the same. And it's like, no. We all get to maintain our perfect individuality, the uniqueness of our character, our beautiful gifts and blessings, and I don't want to say special relationships because that's something different entirely, but our blessings and gifts are eternal, and as we share them with one another, we start to come into them more and more. But temporarily, we may seem to have relationships or connections that are very unique to our path, that we can also share. Um, and so we get to maintain all of that. We get to share all of that, and we get to enjoy the benefits of sharing that and having that shared with us. But we're just no longer strangers. We can come to understand each other and see each other more clearly, and no longer become suspicious of one another. And I think that that can happen many ways. The way I've chosen, or that I have partnered with the Holy Spirit to choose, is just to completely open up my experience. And it's not something many people have chosen thus far. I don't think. I think there are some. There are some, of course. And it's a beautiful way to no longer be a stranger to people, for them to come to truly know you and trust you. Although it can be very frustrating, especially as we outwardly we have these traditions and we have these ways of saying things, and these things we don't talk about and the things we do talk about. And so when you open your mind completely and wholly to someone, I think there can be a period of adjustment where there can be a lot of discomfort or sometimes shock or upset or disturbance at just really hearing someone's every thought. Although I'm a very mild person, I'm not as peaceful as I had hoped I would be. And I'm practicing that, and there are times when I am, but I am a very mild person, and it's hard when criticisms come thrown my way. I'm sometimes I'm sometimes like, I'm so sorry. I know I'm working on it. Other times I'm like, you're joking, right? Like, do you understand the crazy people that are in this world? And you're like, trust me, I am your friend. Although I just read a quote by the Buddha, we don't have friends, we don't have enemies, we have only teachers. And that's so true. We're all students and we're all teachers. And we all have so much to teach and so much to learn. Anyways, for me to not have other people be strangers, unless they'd like to open their mind the same way that I've opened mine, which is fairly rare. It's just to come, I think, to just come see me and say, hey, I see you, and to just be themselves so I can see them. And for me, that's usually enough. I'm a very trusting person. It's just hard. Sorry, I keep shaking this. When they're just in my head, and that's when I have a hard time moving them from stranger to family. Even though I know we're all one family, it's just something I'm struggling with right now, and that's okay. Or I seem to be. um, so a separated or divided mind must be confused. So right now we're in the process of realizing our one mind and becoming less and less separated and divided, at least in our awareness. Now we have to move our way of seeing the world and our love and peace and joy into that same oneness. So first the connected minds start to go live, and our awareness is brought into the oneness, but we still seem divided because we don't agree on everything. Our path up to this point has made us so separate from one another that I think there's a period of adjustment where we have to keep revisiting who we are, where we come from, where we're going, what we stand for, what's true and what's false, what is love and what is fear, and keep reminding each other of our choice to choose love, and that love is all there is, and that God is love, and the kingdom of heaven is love. And so we have to keep choosing love. And helping guide each other to come to be able to examine different ways of thinking that we've subscribed to for so long, or different reactions to certain things that keep pulling us away from that love and back into fear or ego, and just kind of gently, lovingly keep pointing that out and breaking it down and saying, here's how you can reframe that same thing, and it's much more in alignment, and takes a lot of patience and a lot of repetition. It's very helpful when we can do it together, but it's what I've been trying to do, although I'm not so gentle all the time. I can be very harsh. I can be very abrasive in my mind, and so I apologize if you've ever heard me thinking. So I can be very gentle and loving too, though. So I love when I do that. Anyways, this makes its aspects strangers to each other, and this is the essence of the fear-prone condition in which attack is always possible. You have every reason to feel afraid as you perceive yourself. This is why you cannot escape from fear until you realize that you did not and could not create yourself. You can never make your misperceptions true, and your creation is beyond your own error. That is why you must eventually choose to heal the separation. Right-mindedness is not to be confused with the knowing mind, because it is applicable only to right perception. You can be right-minded or wrong-minded, and even this is subject to degrees, clearly demonstrating that knowledge is not involved. The term right-mindedness is properly used as the correction for wrong-mindedness, and applies to the state of mind that induces accurate perception. It is miracle-minded because it heals misperception, and this is indeed a miracle in view of how you perceive yourself. Perception always involves some misuse of mind, because it brings the mind into areas of uncertainty. The mind is very active. When it chooses to be separated, it chooses to perceive. Until then, it wills only to know. Afterwards, it can only choose ambiguously. And the only way out of ambiguity is clear perception. The mind returns to its proper function only when it wills to know. This places it in service of spirit, where perception is changed. The mind chooses to divide itself when it chooses to make its own levels. But it could not entirely separate itself from spirit, because it is from spirit that it derives its whole power to make or create. Even in miscreation, the mind is affirming its source, or it would merely cease to be. This is impossible because the mind belongs to spirit which God created, and which is therefore eternal. The ability to perceive made the body possible, because you must perceive something and with something. That is why perception involves an exchange or translation, which knowledge does not need. The interpretive function of perception, a distorted form of creation, then permits you to interpret the body as yourself in an attempt to escape from the conflict you have induced. Spirit, which knows, could not be reconciled with this loss of power because it is incapable of darkness. This makes spirit almost inaccessible to the mind and entirely inaccessible to the body. Therefore, spirit is perceived as a threat because light abolishes darkness merely by showing you it is not there. Truth will always overcome error in this way. This cannot be an active process of correction because, as I've already emphasized, knowledge does not do anything. It can be perceived as an attacker, but it cannot attack. What you perceive as its attack is your own vague recognition that knowledge can always be remembered, never having been destroyed. God and his creations remain in surety, and therefore know that no miscreation exists. Truth cannot deal with errors that you want. I was a man who remembered spirit and its knowledge. As a man, I did not attempt to counteract error with knowledge, but to correct error from the bottom up. I demonstrated both the powerlessness of the body and the power of the mind. By uniting my will with that of my Creator, I naturally remembered spirit and its real purpose. I cannot unite your will with God's for you. But I can erase all misperceptions from your mind if you will bring it under my guidance. Only your misperceptions stand in your way. Without them, your choice is certain. Sane perception induces sane choosing. I cannot choose for you, but I can help you make your own right choice. Many are called, but few are chosen. Should be, all are called, but few choose to listen. Therefore, they do not choose right. The chosen ones are merely those who choose right sooner. Right minds can do this now, and they will find rest unto their souls. God knows you only in peace, and this is your reality. So, our bodies are not who we are. We're pure spirit, light, and love. We are eternal. Our bodies are not eternal. They are temporary, as we all know. And we have them as gifts with which to perceive, since we chose to be separate and needed something to perceive with. Now, along with time and forgiveness, the body can bring us back to our eternal reality. And we should utilize it to do so. We should utilize it to facilitate that mission, both for our seemingly separate selves and for the oneness that is God's creation. And we can start by truly acknowledging that we are not our bodies. We are spirit. We are one with God. We are one with Jesus Christ. And helping others to understand the same, and that there are no exceptions. As much as some may choose to temporize or deny the truth of God that is within them, He will never leave them, and He will always be there, which means they too are called home, and as teachers and as students, because we learn even from teaching. It is our privilege to help the world see that and help people who could never believe that to be true for themselves come into a place of understanding that it is true and that they are not lost and hope is not gone for them, but they are perfectly and purely loved, and that we offer them all of the healing and blessings that we have to give in hopes that they might join us uh, in coming home. And so I think that's part of why the Holy Spirit, my higher Holy Spirit self, acknowledged my decision to share my journey with as many people as would choose to listen on some level, maybe one they're unaware of. That message might be heard and by those who may not have otherwise heard it, so that they can also come into an understanding of who they truly are and how to get home and save time and reduce suffering, not just for themselves, but for the world. And not just for the world, but for themselves. So it is a gift to have a body, but it is a product of our having believed ourselves separate from God in the first place. Now, I do believe, and I don't know if this says it in the course, but our creation here, the world we've built, can be brought into perfect alignment with eternity and can be transformed into an eternal existence where we do still have bodies. We're not that body, But those bodies are perfect and healthy and well, and also eternal, or as some would say, immortal. But um, that would require a shift of the entire world into miracle-mindedness. And that's something we can start doing right now today by denying fear and lies and embracing truth and love and healing and joining, which can seem scary. I think we're so used to this ego manipulative world. But the truth will never leave us. And we'll keep hearing it until we choose correctly, because it is an eventuality. We will inevitably choose correctly. And the opportunity we have today is to choose that right now and to help keep each other in that decision. Tomorrow, we'll be reading Beyond Perception. So I forgot to tell you guys a few days ago, I went to a friend of mine. We've been Instagram, Facebook friends for years, but we never met. His name was Michael. He always asked me if I want to go hiking or whatever, but I just never did. So he asked me if I wanted to go see a movie with his friends. So I went. We didn't even go see a movie. We just hung out at their apartment and had Thai food. But they're all gay as well, and so I don't really go out much anymore with many gay people. I don't go out much anymore at all. So it was very interesting to be with them, but it was also very refreshing. It was very nice. I felt old and unattractive, but I still really enjoyed it, and it was nice. We talked about dating and also spirituality, and then personality tests. And so I could never remember my Myers-Briggs personalities. So I took the test again right there, and I'm an ENFP, right? ENFP, yeah, which is called the, what is it called? I took a lot of notes. The campaigner or the champion. And I watched a few YouTube videos about ENFPs, and they were like so spot on. I felt very like, whoa. It was very interesting. Talked a lot about how I exploration and authenticity are big drivers for me. That's my driver and my co-pilot. Very curious. I see the world as a spider web of interconnected thoughts. And she said it was very interesting. She said when a bunch of flies land on the web, the spider knows not only exactly where they're at, but how each of those flies are connected to one another. And that really resonated with me. Natural scientist who experiments with words and the world, and I love to play word games. Sometimes I have some kids in my mind somewhere through space and time, and I love to play word games with them. It's one of the best ways for teaching, to teach children how to look at words and examine them and think about them and tie them to other words and find root words and maybe switch letters around or see what words can do frontwards or backwards, and just really sit and play and chew and examine a word, and sounds and things like that. So it's one of my favorite things to do, and I think it's a great way to teach. And so it's interesting that she said that. She said the world becomes a test iterate when we live in it. And I thought that was interesting as well. So And then she talks about authenticity. We're sympathetic to other people's plight. And if something is deeply personal that we're experiencing, it's likely to be part of a more universal experience as well. So that we're gifted in self-expression, and we touch with mediums such as music and sharing who we are. Where core values are found, sometimes we have trouble choosing because we have so many that we value. And so once we use our authenticity to choose a cause, it really helps us find cause for championing. And then our backseat drivers, our 10-year-old and 3-year-old, she called them, can have both positive and negative. So our driving factors are more all positive, it seems. So effectiveness is my 10-year-old. So when it can show up when I'm being defensive. So when information I don't want to see comes to me, I can feel like it's an attack on my ego. And this can make me manipulative, passive aggressive, or even seem like a con artist. It says I may overcommit and I don't have good time management skills, which is so true. I'm just not naturally good at that. It says I can become overwhelmed. Although on the good side, it does give me natural leadership skills. And then I should surround myself with people who are good at managing time or schedules and taking care of details. And then my 3-year-old, which sits behind the driver, is my memory. So I go to my memory when I'm under extreme stress. So when the moment I'm in is very stressful, and I feel like it's fatalistic, like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is too much, whatever. I have a fear for my physical safety. I de-stress by revisiting pleasant memories. So I'll go back in my mind to a memory that will help me. So that's not the most ideal way for me to have my memory, but she said she does recommend keeping journals. And as a good thing, my memory as an aspiration can drive me to create a cultural legacy that lasts. I can be good at creating novel, new paradigms and systems and being a part of a lasting infrastructure. Connects with others via a sense of adventure and romantic optimism. Teaches through performance. I thought that was interesting. And is inspiring, provocative, and influential. She says to not be deceptive, just be honest. Tell people what you want. Listen and let them tell you what they want and find a mutual solution. And then finally, she says we can be financially reckless. So to set up an accountability partner or financial advisor. And that's something I've also always struggled with. And then finally, she said prefers careers that have a social cause or where you're working with others. She says you're likely to jump ship if life is only routine. Make sure you're in a career or job that has change or experimentation. She said you're the type that's the most amazing employee for 3 to 6 months, and then boom. And I'm like, yep, that's exactly, that's me. Although I'm working on it. So it was just very interesting. It was very educational. I was like, well, that's definitely my personality type. She said we're very rare, so to keep sharing our gift with the world. That's what I hope to do. I just have to keep trying to get better. Hopefully, I can join with others and learn from them and offer my gifts. I think we could really lift a lot of people. But anyways, so thank you for allowing me to share. I'm going to go ahead and go, but I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you.